Utah is often portrayed as a geologist's dream, a rugged landscape of red rock arches, desolate salt flats, and canyons that cut deep into the Earth's crust. To the average tourist, it is a playground of natural beauty. But to those who study the alternative history of North America, Utah is a massive locked vault. While the state is famous for its dinosaur bones, there is a persistent and unsettling whisper that circles among the locals and amateur archaeologists. The idea that something else, something human but far larger, is buried in the dry caves of the Beehive State. For decades, legends have circulated about a lost race of blonde-haired giants who ruled this territory long before the modern tribes arrived, leaving behind not just their bones, but advanced metalwork and stone sarcophagi that defy the standard historical narrative. This is not merely folklore passed down around campfires. It is a trail of evidence that includes specific locations, named witnesses, and physical artifacts that have suspiciously vanished from the record. From the hidden chambers of Brewer's Cave to the disturbing petroglyphs of 9 Mile Canyon that depict six-fingered kings, the clues point to a forgotten chapter of American history. However, unlike other regions where the evidence decayed in the damp soil, the dry desert air of Utah has preserved these secrets perfectly. This video investigates the specific claim that a race of giants was discovered here, only to be systematically erased by a combination of academic dogma and government intervention. We are entering the forbidden zone of the Southwest to uncover the discovery that was never meant to be seen: the mystery of Brewer's Cave. In the vast lexicon of lost treasure and forbidden archaeology, few stories are as detailed or as controversial as the discovery of Brewer's Cave. The saga began in 1955, when a local Manti resident and guide, known simply as Brewer, claimed to have stumbled upon a hidden entrance in the rugged canyons of Sanpete County. Unlike other spelunkers who found arrowheads or pottery, Brewer claimed to have entered a man-made chamber that was clearly a royal crypt. According to the account he later shared with naturalist Don Lyman, the cave was not a primitive shelter, but a constructed tomb. Inside, lined against the walls, were stone sarcophagi, an architectural feature that is completely alien to the known indigenous cultures of the American West, who typically buried their dead in earth mounds or crevice graves. Brewer's description of the contents of these stone boxes was precise and terrifying. He reported opening the lids to reveal mummified remains of individuals who measured roughly 9 feet in length. These were not skeletal fragments. The arid conditions of the cave had preserved the soft tissue, leaving the skin with a texture resembling cured leather. But the most shocking detail was the hair. Brewer insisted that the mummies possessed distinct blonde and red hair, a genetic trait that seemingly separated them from the Native American ancestors of the region. He described them as wearing copper and gold breastplates and being surrounded by metal weapons that demonstrated a level of metallurgical skill unknown to the pre-Columbian tribes of Utah. For years, Brewer attempted to get the scientific community to take his finds seriously, but his claims were met with derision. To prove he wasn't lying, he reportedly took a few select individuals to the site, but he was paranoid about the government seizing the treasure, a fear that turned out to be well-founded. Those who saw the cave described a series of steps carved into the rock leading down to the main chamber, suggesting a high level of engineering. The existence of Brewer's Cave challenges the isolationist view of history, suggesting that a technologically advanced, physically superior race lived in the mountains of Utah. The stone boxes are particularly significant because they mirror burial practices found in Europe and the Middle East, hinting at a transoceanic connection that mainstream archaeology vehemently denies. The Manti excavations. Long before Brewer stumbled into his cave in the 1950s, the early settlers of Sanpete County were already finding things in the soil that shouldn't have been there. In the mid-19th century, as Mormon pioneers arrived in the Utah Territory to build their Zion, they began the arduous task of tilling the virgin land for agriculture. They were not looking for history, they were looking for survival. However, as their plows cut through the earth, they frequently struck ancient mounds. These were not natural hillocks, but constructed burial sites. According to town records and pioneer journals from Manti and the surrounding areas, these excavations unearthed skeletons of extraordinary size, consistently measuring 8 feet or taller. One of the most compelling aspects of the Manti excavations is the specific anatomical details recorded by these amateur archaeologists. In one well-documented instance, a pioneer farmer reported digging up a skeleton that was so large he initially thought it was a fossilized animal. Upon closer inspection, it was undeniably human, but of a scale that frightened the settlers. The report describes a skull of such immense circumference that a grown man could fit it over his own head like a helmet, with room to spare. This helmet test appears in multiple accounts from the 19th century Midwest and West, serving as a visceral, practical measurement of the size difference between modern humans and this ancient population. What makes the Utah finds unique is the cultural context in which they were found. The Mormon settlers believed these bones belonged to the Nephites or Jaredites, ancient races described in their religious texts who were said to be large and warlike. Because of this belief, the settlers initially treated the bones with a degree of reverence and curiosity rather than immediate scientific dismissal. They documented the presence of copper ornaments, headplates, and intricate stone tools buried with the giants. These artifacts suggested a sophisticated society with trade networks and organized warfare, contradicting the idea that the area was only inhabited by simple hunter-gatherer bands. The horned giant petroglyphs. While bones can be hidden in basements and caves can be blasted shut, there is one form of evidence that is etched directly into the skin of the earth: rock art. In the remote canyons of Utah, specifically near Vernal and in the famous 9 Mile Canyon, the cliff faces are covered in thousands of petroglyphs attributed to the Fremont culture. Among the depictions of bighorn sheep and hunting scenes, there is a recurring motif that is deeply unsettling to anthropologists. These are the horned giants, massive trapezoidal figures that dominate the rock panels. They are depicted with broad, square shoulders, triangular torsos, and towering stature, often shown standing next to much smaller stick-figure humans, establishing a clear hierarchy of size. The standard academic explanation is that these figures represent shamans or spirit guides, and the size difference is merely symbolic of their spiritual importance. However, this interpretation ignores the biological specificity of the art. Many of these giant figures are depicted with polydactyly, having 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. In genetics, polydactyly is a rare dominant trait, but in the legends of the giants, including biblical accounts, it is a defining physical characteristic of the race. The fact that the ancient artists of Utah consistently carved these gods with 6 fingers suggests they were drawing from life, documenting a specific genetic lineage that physically ruled over the region. The imagery in regions like Dry Fork Canyon is aggressive and imposing. The giants are often shown holding severed heads or wielding weapons, reinforcing the idea of a warrior caste. They wear elaborate headdresses or helmets, represented as horns, that mirror the copper headplates found in the burial mounds. The sheer scale of the petroglyphs themselves is often larger than life, with some figures measuring nearly life-size on sheer cliff walls that would require scaffolding to reach. This was not casual graffiti. It was a monumental effort to record the likeness of the big men who controlled the canyon. If we view these petroglyphs not as abstract art, but as historical records, they corroborate the stories of the bones found in Manti and Brewer's Cave. They depict a real population of large, powerful, six-fingered elites who lived alongside the ancestors of the Ute and Fremont peoples. The rock art is the visual proof that the giants of Utah were not invisible monsters of myth, but flesh and blood rulers who left a psychological scar on the indigenous population so deep that they felt compelled to carve their image into stone for eternity. The skeletons may have been taken away, but the portraits of the giants remain, staring down from the canyon walls as silent witnesses to a forbidden history. The Great Salt Lake Anomalies. The Great Salt Lake is often viewed as a dead saline remnant of the ancient Lake Bonneville, hostile to life and civilization. However, archaeological records from the early 20th century paint a very different picture of this desolate landscape. Before the modern water levels receded, the islands within the lake, specifically Antelope Island and the Promontory Point region, were hubs of activity for a mysterious group of people. During excavations conducted in the 1930s, researchers from the University of Utah began to uncover burial mounds that did not fit the profile of the nomadic Shoshone or Ute tribes who historically inhabited the basin. These mounds contained the remains of a sedentary, undetermined race that possessed physical traits completely distinct from the known indigenous populations of the Great Basin. The skeletons unearthed during these expeditions presented immediate biological puzzles for the excavators. The most commonly reported anomaly was the sheer size and density of the jawbones. Field reports noted that the mandibles were massive, often described as heavily built, and significantly wider than those of modern humans. This robust facial structure supported the accounts of 19th-century pioneers who claimed to have found giants in the area. These were not the gracile frames of people adapted to a starvation diet in the desert. These were the heavy bones of a dominant, well-fed population. The excavators also noted the height of the individuals, with several male specimens measuring well over 6 feet, a statistically significant deviation from the average height of native populations at the time. Culturally, the artifacts found alongside these Salt Lake giants pointed to a connection with the mound-building civilizations of the Mississippi Valley, thousands of miles to the east. The presence of slate ornaments and specific burial orientations suggested that this was a western outpost of a vast continental empire that history books claim never existed. The standard academic model insists that the Great Basin was a cultural backwater, isolated by mountains and desert. Yet the physical evidence on these islands suggested a sophisticated, genetically distinct society that controlled the salt trade and thrived in the region long before the current tribes arrived. The silence of the universities. The suppression of the Utah giants is not just a story of lost bones from the 1800s. It is a modern saga of intimidation and academic gatekeeping. This is best illustrated by the struggle of Judy Wolfe, the granddaughter of the man who discovered Brewer's Cave. For decades, Wolfe attempted to vindicate her grandfather's discovery and bring the stone sarcophagi to light. Her testimony provides a rare glimpse into how modern institutions handle forbidden archaeology. She claimed that representatives from major universities, including Brigham Young University and the University of Utah, were well aware of the site. According to Wolfe, these academics didn't just ignore the evidence, they actively worked to suppress it, fearing that the discovery would destroy their established timelines and careers. Wolfe alleged that in the latter half of the 20th century, university archaeologists visited the area and confirmed the existence of the anomalies. However, instead of publishing their findings, they allegedly threatened the witnesses. The narrative shifted from curiosity to containment. The stone boxes and the giant mummies were not viewed as scientific breakthroughs, but as threats to the credibility of the institution. If a university were to announce that they found blonde-haired giants in a Greek-style crypt in Utah, they would be ridiculed by the global scientific community. Therefore, the decision was made to bury the truth rather than face the controversy. The most insidious tool used in this cover-up was the label of hoax. By publicly branding Brewer and his descendants as liars or fantasy seekers, the university successfully inoculated the public against the truth. It is a tactic of psychological warfare. Discredit the witness so you never have to address the evidence. Yet persistent rumors from former university students and employees suggest that the artifacts were not left in the cave. There are whispers of a restricted collection in the deepest basements of Utah's universities, where the copper plates and the oversized skulls from Brewer's Cave are stored, labeled as frauds or replicas to prevent serious study. The investigation into the lost giants of Utah ends at a wall of rock. Whether it is the collapsed entrance of Brewer's Cave, allegedly sealed with dynamite to keep the curious out, or the closed doors of the university archives, the result is the same: access denied. Utah stands as a monument to what happens when history becomes inconvenient. We have the legends of the Paiute, the journals of the Mormon pioneers, the petroglyphs of the Fremont, and the testimony of modern witnesses, all pointing to the same conclusion. A race of giants once walked these canyons. Yet the physical proof has been systematically removed from the board. The forbidden discovery was not lost, it was confiscated, until a new generation of researchers finds the courage to bypass the gatekeepers and reopen the sealed entrances. The giants of Utah will remain ghosts, their existence proven by everything except the one thing we are not allowed to see: the bones themselves.